totally around 12%, meaning 88% of the people who could be in the union are not. And if you think for a moment of what that would mean in your workplace, if 88% of the people where you work were not in the union, how much power would the union have? And that is the state of affairs the labor movement finds itself in today. In the private sector, it's much lower. It's actually 7%. And that explains why we have been under attack in the public sector. How many people here work for the public sector? Can you just raise your hands? Meaning you work for the government job. I'm assuming TriMet is government, right? Okay. And how many don't? How many work for a private company? Just curious. Okay. Thank you. What's going on is that the right wing in this country has been successful in getting the private sector workers to hate the public sector workers. And I'm not saying the people in this room hate each other, but what I am saying is that we have a critical problem around the country because we have working people who, instead of being angry at wealthy people who are taking all the money, are instead turning their anger towards government workers and trying to strip government workers of pensions and health care and so forth. And that's the situation we find ourselves in. We want you to know that the last couple of years, the work we've been doing has been trying to create an antidote to that problem. We've had great challenges, not only to labor, but to transit. In 85% of the cities in the United States over the course of the last, going on 3 years now, we've had service cuts or fare increases, or both. In places like New York, where I'm from, they have cut service dramatically and raised fares at the same time. They've eliminated service that ran for 100 years. And in some places like Pittsburgh, where in September, 30% of the service right now is slated to be taken off the roads. We are at the tipping point where we could lose the viability of transit in major American cities. So it's a critical problem. We have to try and find solutions to it. And the biggest approach that we've had, the most significant thing that we've done, is first change the way we train our officers. For as long as I've been around, and I've been around more than 30 years in the ATU, we have trained over and over again on things like grievance and arbitration. But we're at a point now where unions are losing their ability to negotiate a contract. So how much, you could be the best arbitrator in the world, but if you haven't got a contract clause that allows arbitration, it's meaningless. So we changed our training to deal with the political economy, to try and explain to our officers, our frontline troops that speak to the members every day, exactly what's going on behind the curtain that is making American workers take it on the chin, and how we can try and fight back. But the second thing I want to spend a minute on, or two, is the idea that we can't win in the battle that we're confronted with if we try and do it alone. Dr. King said it in 1963 at the Lincoln Memorial, in the course of his I Have a Dream speech. He emphasized that we cannot walk alone. And around the country, local unions are engaging in their communities more than ever. And we're encouraging it, we're training for it, we are supplying funds to help local unions do it. And we have created a program where local unions essentially can raise money to engage in a campaign in their community, and we will match those funds to help them do it. But in addition to that, a month ago, we started a nonprofit organization whose only purpose is going to be to go out and organize passengers on transit throughout the United States. Americans for Transit is the nonprofit we started, and the whole point behind it is that there are more than 100 passengers for every member we have. And if we could organize 10% of our passengers to fight for transit, not to fight for us, just to stand up and fight back when they try to raise fares and cut service, then the voice we have will be 10 times as large as what we have now. If we got to 50%, it would be that much larger, and the power we would have would be huge. And it's something, frankly, that the labor movement has not been good at over the course of my lifetime. That is reaching out beyond its walls and organizing the broader community to fight back. The alternative is pretty simple, and I want you to know this. I'm going to tell you a story about Chicago, something that's fairly current. It's what's happened in the last 6 months. And I think, as you hear it, you may relate a little bit of this to what's going on here. But let me just tell you about it. This guy in Chicago who early in his career was the political director in the White House under Bill Clinton. And when Bill Clinton left the White House, he went out, worked in Wall Street for a couple of years, picked up $15 million. I'm not going to say he earned it, but he somehow amassed $15 million in 2 years in Wall Street. And then he ran for Congress from Illinois. And he went into Congress, he became the head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in a short period that he was in Congress. And then he went to work in the Obama White House. In the Obama White House, he was chief of staff to the President of the United States. He's a very powerful guy. He leaves the White House, and he runs for mayor of Chicago. And he got elected. His name is Rahm Emanuel. Well, Rahm Emanuel, in December, both directly and through the president of the Chicago Transit Authority, started a media campaign against the ATU. And the whole media campaign was based on lies. He listed 7 things that the contractor transit workers had in town that were just immoral and obnoxious and wrong. And one I always remember was the one that really knocked me off my chair, was he said that when transit workers come to work, the first thing they do is they get a 10-minute break. Paid break. Unbelievable. I was jealous. I had never seen that in a contract. And they actually said this in the newspaper. And, it conjures up for the riders a vision of a Rolls Royce pulling up in front of the depot, and, the chauffeur gets out and lets the driver out of the car, and they hand him a silver plate with a cup of coffee and some cream on it. And we found out what it was. It's simply the 10 minutes they get to check out their bus. Right? When you're out there checking brakes and steering. But I want you to consider what this was all about. The mayor wants concessions. He wants the transit workers to give up things like their pension rights, their salaries, their work rules. Huge, millions of dollars of concessions. He knew he couldn't do that simply by going to the bargaining table and picking a fight. He knew he needed to build a coalition around him. And that coalition is the people who ride the system. So, a powerful guy like Rahm Emanuel understands that first principle. And the second thing is he was so desperate to do it. It was so important on his agenda to build that coalition that he went out and lied about what was in our contract in order to get the support of the riders and, frankly, the hatred of the riders aimed at us. And he did the same thing with school teachers, and the fight continues in Chicago. But the important thing for you to know is this is happening all over the country, where politicians who are trying to break our unions, cut our wages, strip us of our pensions, are out there deliberately not just building the coalition, but telling tall tales about what luxurious lives we lead in order to get the public on our side. Our view is we have to get the riders first. We can't allow politicians to build a coalition against us with our riders, and that's why we have built this nonprofit organization, which is intended to help all of our locals do that. We actually poached a guy from Washington State, a guy named Andrew Austin. He's the executive director of this organization. He has been involved in 17 successful campaigns to get transit funding out here in the Northwest. And he's just a brilliant young man who is working vigorously to build this organization. And I hope that your local will participate, not only in getting help from us and from the organization, but also in finding a way to build broader coalitions here in the Northwest to stand up and fight for transit. And I say that recognizing that this is one area of the country that has done a lot of that work already. Okay, I'm conscious of that. But we need to do more, and the onslaught that we're seeing in Wisconsin and Michigan and Florida and around the country is going to come. And I know you've heard about them. You might have think you've seen some of them. It has not hit here yet the way it will as they succeed around the country. A couple other things I just want to let you know, and that is we have formed a joint committee with the TWU, the Transport Workers Union, to work on 2 issues. Well, the primary issue is health and safety. But the 2 issues that we wanted to work on with them first, one was assaults of transit workers, and the other one is bathroom breaks. And, when I started driving the bus in 1978, I was probably out on the road for about a week. And I was in training with another driver. We had an empty bus at a very busy intersection, by the way, in Brooklyn. And he said, I got to go to the bathroom. Okay, so he got up. So I thought we were going into the mall or park next to You walk to the back doors of the bus, push him up a little bit, he just stood there, open the bathroom. And I looked at him, I was 21 years old, I was like in shock. I said, I thought you were going to go inside. Hey kid, you got a pipe too. He said, kid, you'll get used to it, this is your bathroom. Oh, really? And we had 600 drivers in our garage in Flatbush at the time. There was one woman, it was all male. And if you went to a union meeting then and raised your hand and said, listen, I really don't like the idea of, using the back door for a bathroom, people would laugh at you. I mean, it was like, nobody wanted to hear that. One thing that's changed as more women have come on the job is, it's a lot harder for a woman to do that. And I think women are a little less... No, but also, women are a little less reluctant about standing up for their own dignity sometimes. So we have launched this effort. We have people throughout the ATU and throughout the TW that have joined on this committee. And believe me, I've seen enough committees to have conversations in my lifetime to do nothing, that I'm sensitive. This is not going to be just a show committee. We're actually trying to figure out ways that we can first make the issue of restroom breaks more important in the ATU. We said it again. We want to make it more important in the ATU. Sometimes, particularly what's happened to us over the last 20 years with computer run cuts and schedules, we have seen the amount of downtime bus drivers have affect dramatically, and I'm sure the same is true in the trolley. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it is. And we have computers that take over our lives in a way that is physically damaging to us as operators. And we believe that this is the one thing, unlike pensions, when we stand up and defend our pensions, we're standing up in a world where most people don't have them, right? So when you stand up and say, no, a pension's a good thing, people don't quite get that right away. But when you stand up and say, I come to work and I have the right to go to the bathroom, most people get that. And I'm not guessing on that, we've done polls. So we're going to do a public campaign about that. In the meantime, one of the consequences of service cuts and fare increases has been that all over the country and in Canada, we're watching our members get assaulted at alarming rates. In some places, they're up 25%. In some places, they're up 300%. This is assaults on frontline transit workers. We are the only people that have to suit up and go into a neighborhood to collect taxes, right? And we're going into neighborhoods collecting taxes in terms of the fare at a time when service is down and people are waiting longer and people don't have jobs. And now we tell them, guess what? The tax went up and you got to pay me. And the consequence is a lot more than notices. And we have people that have been disabled for their entire life as a consequence of these assaults. And I just want you to know that we take it seriously on a national level, so much so that we have partnered with the TW to try and amplify not only our voice but our activity in dealing with it. Well, the committee will be reporting back through in transit and through our website. And I just want to put a plug in for two things, our website and emails. We have done a lot of work changing our website, trying to update it, give more information out to the members, cover news in a very contemporaneous way. We change news stories on our website sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. It'd be very helpful to us and to you, I think, if you found the time to just once a day take a look at what's going on. You learn about what's happening, not only in our union, but in the labor movement, and some of the things that are happening in the economy that are affecting us as well. And finally, on this point, we're in an age of email. And when we took over, we had about 3,000 emails with 191,000 members. We have, and it's not easy. We're up to 10,000 now. We're building our email list. We want to be able to communicate directly to our members all over the country without spending essentially $1 a person to mail a letter. So, and on our website, we're running an ongoing contest. If you go to the website, we are giving out iPads and union jackets randomly picked by the people who submit their email and local information so that we can build this email list. So I'd encourage you to please get on there and do that. 2 more points I want to make. One is we just had a very bad experience in Congress, just like most of the American people. The transportation bill that was passed about 10 days ago was a huge disappointment. We have been fighting for years to get some operating aid out to our systems from the federal government. And the ATU has had, frankly, a very modest proposal for years. And then we're not even saying spend more money at this point. We're saying allow local transit agencies to decide how to spend the money you give them. So so that if they want to use it to keep fares down, maintain service, as opposed to just building buildings and buying more equipment, they can do it. This is the capital and operating argument that you probably heard. I was disappointed when the bill was passed and it was not in it, but they also went further. This was in a conference between the Senate Democrats and the House Republicans. They got the vote, and despite promising us and the AFL-CIO 48 hours before the bill was done, they added some privatization language to the federal transportation bill. It's like the Republicans in the House had drafted a bill that would have essentially forced privatization by giving cities and transit agencies an extra 20% funding if they would privatize. That's how crazy the Republicans are. Well, we got that beat, but what they did is sneak in language that is reminiscent of what happened in the 80s with Ronald Reagan, where they're going to have studies and they're going to promote the concept of privatization to agencies. And it's a very troublesome thing, and frankly, more than anything, it's just another example of us being let down by politicians who claim to be our friends. And I'm sure you've all lived through that once or twice.
Why were we just asked to give another $4,500 to them then?
I can't speak to that particular thing, but let me speak to the idea in terms of what we can do about it. Because the next thing I'm going to tell you is, this year, 2012, if we allow Mitt Romney to become president, then we're going to get kicked a lot harder. And I guess the best way I can say it is, our friends kick us, our enemies kick us to death. And we're in a position now, frankly, that if we don't re-elect President Obama, and listen, I'm going to say this as somebody, I've been around a long time, and I feel older than I look. Well, maybe not, but I'm old. And I've heard year after year, election after election, this is the election of a lifetime, okay? And I'm here to tell you it's true. If, in fact, Romney gets a hold of the White House, and in particular, if the Republicans take the Senate, we will have Wisconsin, and probably even worse, Michigan, where they just stripped workers of all their rights, played out all over the country. That's our concern. In terms of giving to politicians, which maybe more directly an answer to the question that was shouted out, the whole point behind our nonprofit organization is that we don't believe we can rely on any one or any 100 elected officials to save our ass. We're going to have to do it ourselves. And the first thing we have to do is build our power. What I'm really saying to you is that money has become corporate money because of the Citizens United decision of the Supreme Court has become, it's pouring in over the transims for Republicans and for Democrats in Washington. Corporations at this point control our government. In order to take it back, you have to build a bigger coalition than a dwindling AFL-CIO. You just have no choice. And we have something that a carpenter does not have, something that an electrician does not have. We see the same people every day, number one. Number two, they rely on the service just like we do. We rely on it for work, they rely on it to get to work, to get to school. We are an integral part of every city in America. And we have, as I said, 100 pastors for every one of us, and we're not talking to them the way we need to. We have to reach out and reach our hands out to them and say to them, convince them that they and we have the same interests. And if we can do that, that is the contribution we can make to turn this around. Politicians, I've been in meetings in the last year in the Senate, where senators I've known for years have said to me, yeah, okay, we understand, that's for the union, that's what we want for the union. I said, no, we're talking about the public. Yeah. They dismiss it. They don't believe that we can rile up the public in a way that could put them at risk. But they do see the corporate money coming in that makes them safe. We have to reach out and build this broader community, and the advantage we have, again, as transit workers, is we see them every day. We live with them. You spend more time with your passengers probably than you do with your family. We need to build that kind of relationship. And it's not just one-on-one by smiling at them and saying good morning. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building a political relationship with them by doing community work and by talking to them off hours, by putting and organizing and so forth. And we have a model. I'm not going to sit here and say, here's an idea that we're thinking about. We have done this across the United States over the course of the last year with great success. You should be getting a magazine in the mail any day that has, I think, 6 separate stories of places like Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where the city has 100,000 more people today than they did when Katrina hit, because people migrated over from New Orleans. And the city was going to shut down the transit system. just shut it out altogether. And the people got together, our union, with a faith-based group, organized community support, put an initiative on the ballot, and got the people to vote to raise their property tax in a way that not only saved the city, but will double the size of it. It can happen. Let me just tell you one story, too, about Wisconsin. You all know, people get tired, I don't want to do one. I'll tell you this one story, then I'd like to see if we can do some Q&A. In Wisconsin, I was out there with the Walker recall election, and I suppose you all know what happened there. You probably know a little bit about Scott Walker trying to destroy working people. Forget about unions. Unions are well done in terms of being public about destroying. He just wants to take away, every right you have as a union member of Wisconsin. And we went out there and we did a very vigorous effort to try and defeat him, and we lost. But on the same day we lost, in a little town called Weston, it's a place near Warsaw, Wisconsin, where the city aldermen, the city executives had voted to eliminate the transit system, and they did. The system has been shut down in Weston. We went in, it's a community of 16,000 people, and we very quietly ran a campaign. It was quiet in the sense nobody knew who we were. We partnered again with a faith-based group. It was a Catholic church in this case. Often it's a minister, an imam, a rabbi, you never know. And we partnered with them, and we had a campaign where we worked in conjunction with the community and knocked on every door in Weston and talked to the people in Weston. And on the same day that Weston went out and voted 60% in favor of keeping Walker, the same people voted 64% to restore transit. And there's a lot of points in that. First of all, if you make it a union issue and it's about your pension, right in this climate, in this environment, you're losing before you start. But if first you connect with the public and make it an issue about them, I should tell you something else. We did a poll. And we found out that 80% of the people in Weston have never used the transit system. 90%, it's only 10% that use it regularly. 90%, you find people that have used it once or twice but don't use it. Despite that, 64% of the voters voted to restore the system. First, it tells you you can win that kind of campaign. I think you're forced to consider that. Because even if you put all your faith in a politician, and the politician loses, what do you got? You lost. But if you go out on issues, if you try and organize around transit, you can win. But there's something bigger than that I want you to think about. Think about this for the next week. We live in an angry society. We live in a place where working people believe it's good to take away pensions from other working people, while billionaires don't pay taxes and get rich. Right? I mean, is that fair enough? And yet, in Weston, what we found is that people still have a sense of community. The reason that people who didn't use transit voted for transit is because they believe, and we know this again, we're not guessing, we told on this before, the people in Weston have a sense that it's good for their city, and you can't have a community if people don't have a way to get around, even if it's not me. That people should have the right and access to get around town. And I think that's a very important, it's a lasting thing in my mind. It's something I think about every single day because it's what gives me hope to believe that we can overcome the anger and the bitterness that's been injected into our politics all across the country. I believe, at the core, most people are good people. They're often misled, they're often lied to, and they're often convinced that their interests are different than everybody else's. But if you can find a way to convince people that they're part of a bigger community, then you can win. People are good. And I say the same thing to you. I encourage you to try and figure out ways in this local community. And so many local communities around the country are doing it. To reach out beyond your local, the people who ride the bus, the people in the community. And let's see if we can build up a sense of common purpose, a sense that people used to have that we're all in this together, not that we're all in this alone. So that's really where we're trying to take this initial union. And I want to thank you for the officers for giving me an opportunity. I want to thank you for sitting here patiently